Hello, everybody. Kathy Caprino here. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. And this one is going to prove just as pretty remarkable, if I do say so myself, as the other 140 whatever. And I'm so thrilled and truly honored to have on as our guest John Walsh, who I am just for the first time speaking directly to. But John, I have poured over your materials, your new book. What a mission and what an illustrious life, but not with a silver spoon did you emerge, and which I find even just more inspiring. So thank you for
Mm.
joining. I'm so excited. And here we see Standout X, so we know what we're going to be talking about. We are. I don't even have a title yet for this one. Why don't you title it for me, John? How we stand out.
How to
What?
stand out in life. Yeah, that sounds great. Let's go with that one. We'll make it
That's
up as
pretty
we
easy.
go.
Yeah, I'll tweak that a little. But everyone, I want to tell you about John, and then we are going to dive into, uh, John and my stuff. I think really dovetails well, and there's going to be a lot of similarities, but there's going to be points of difference, of course. And my world is helping mid career professionals who are lost. Your sweet spot focus right now, as I understand it, is young people. And we're going to get into why that is. And I can't wait to hear
Mm.
why you've seen it so hard for people to figure out how to stand out. So here we go. Let me tell you about John. John Walsh is a best-selling author. Now, this is your first book, right?
Is my first book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Called The Standout Experience: How Students and Young Professionals Can Rise, Shine, and Impact When It Matters Most. Love that. Best-selling author, keynote speaker, and entrepreneur with a passion for helping people and businesses accelerate their potential and transform from start to stand out as fast as possible. His primary focus is on students and young professionals, but he also coaches executives and advises emerging businesses. Before he founded the Standout movement and became the president and CEO of Standout X, I'm pronouncing that correctly, right, John? John
Yes.
spent 20 plus years as a successful finance and strategy executive with the Walt Disney Company, wow, and the Madison Square Garden Company. He continues to serve on the board of directors for Disney's employee owned credit union. And as I read it, you helped launch Disney Plus streaming, didn't you?
That's right. Yes.
Can't that be one of the most successful things that's on in the
Mm-hmm.
planet right now?
Hmm.
So
It is.
you have a lot to teach us, but where where I want to begin is, if it's okay with you, John, just to hear a little bit about your beginnings, because I think it when we read your bio, we think, "Oh, holy cow, he was so successful from second one." And what challenges has John faced? But can you talk a little bit about where you came from and why you're so passionate about doing this work?
Yeah, it's a story that, first of all, thank you for having me and
Thank you.
allowing me to share this. And it's
My
interesting
pleasure.
because it's one of those things that, I've only recently started sharing. And as I was writing the book, I put some of this in the book, and it was, I mean, talk about stepping outside of a comfort zone and what are people going to think. But the cut and right to the chase is, there was a period where when I was a senior in high school, that I found myself homeless, and it lasted probably for 2 years or more there. And my parents got divorced, and no fault of their own. It was entirely me as I reflect back on that. I was just a rebellious kid, I guess. And my parents got divorced, and then my stepmother came in. And you imagine, I mean, it's hard enough being a mom, but imagine coming in and all of a sudden you have a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and you don't even know how to parent, and now you've got teen, preteen, or whatever else. So we had some family dynamics there that were really tough. I didn't help the situation, and there was a big falling out one night, and I ended up, um, you know, I found myself homeless.
Wow, John.
Um, it was interesting because, again, I was a senior in high school, and what is a senior in high school
My
with
gosh.
no money, and like, the only family, at that point, my mom had moved up to Boston, I think, at that point already. So, like, I had nowhere else to go. So I found myself homeless for a while, early on. And you know it took me a while to claw out of that. And I ended up, what we can talk more about the story, but I started my career probably 10 years later than everybody else as a result of that
Really?
story. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I could talk for hours. So we'll talk until we're tired, and then we'll do part two. But can you tell us? Well, first, I'd love to know, how was your first job with Walt Disney?
My first real job, it
Yeah.
was. I whenever I talk about my life journey, I break it down into 6 segments, and
Oh,
the first segment really is that adversity segment, which is
right.
dealing with the homelessness and, just getting by, right? And, day to day. I would say the second was in my
Taking
early
notes.
20s. Yeah, it was in my early 20s to mid 20s, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I didn't go to school right away. I don't know how I graduated from high school because I don't think I went to a single class in my we were doing on a quarter basis, and so 3rd or 4th quarter, I don't think I went to school at
Oh,
all, but somehow I graduated.
wow.
Um, and I didn't go to college. I was not intent on going to college, and so I spent a number of years. I was like, I'm going to be a pilot, and then so I went and worked for an airline,
All
loading
right.
bags onto a plane, and I didn't like that. And then my stepfather is a senior executive in the music industry, and so I was like, well, I'm going to be just like him, and I'm going to go into the music industry. And I tried that I tried working for a record store as my
Wow.
starting point. That didn't work out. Then I was like, well, maybe I want to be a DJ, and I tried my hand at that, and then I was like, so it's like it's that confusion period. And I think we all go through it, not only for the demographic that I'm trying to help, but also yours
Right.
as well. Like,
Right.
am I doing the right thing? What do I want to do with my life? And that's kind of what I did for a really long time. I ended up working for, I think it's because someone told me get an office job because that's like just, it doesn't matter. So I got a
Yeah.
job at a law firm
Oh,
and I
wow.
was working in the mailroom for a while, just delivering packages and that kind of thing. And I guess someone saw something in me and they promoted me to a litigation clerk. So I was helping people prepare for trials and
What?
like all that kind of stuff, which was really
That's
cool.
a big leap.
It was a big leap. I ended up getting fired from that job, and I still don't know why. I think they went through a transition period. I ended up going to another law firm, and I was working there for a while. And the same thing, I started as a clerk, and then they moved me up to. I was doing legal assistant work, like research and helping prepare for trials. And then I became project manager there, and then I was helping manage the office itself. And it was that point where I eventually went back to school. So I didn't like that was really my first career. Disney was like a few jobs down the road.
Oh
And I
my
ended
gosh.
up,
Yeah.
I ended up
Go ahead.
starting as an intern at Disney. I was in my late 20s. When most people were starting in their 20s, early 20s, I was starting in my late 20s. I may have even been 30 when I got my first job at Disney.
What a story. All I can think of is the resilience you had. So what I love to do, story is so interesting, but as I'm a coach, I love to tease out. Okay, so
Mhm.
what about me? The key question I have is, here you were 13, 14, 15, homeless. You finished school somehow.
Mhm.
And then you said, I got to work. And it sounds like you were like, well, I kind of like this. Let me try it on, which is a try on phase, which I
Mhm.
recommend to everybody. But can you give us, you know, a strategy for, how did you persevere through? You mentioned you never did a drug in your whole life.
Mm-mm.
What you went through, there's depression, there's suicidality, there's drug addiction. What do you think allowed you to not be crushed by this? And in a way, it sounds like you had self-esteem that was indestructible. Am I right? Tell us all about this.
I mean, self-esteem, maybe. I've always been ambitious. But that doesn't mean that I was applied ambition, meaning that, I wanted more, but that doesn't mean I actually went and did it and went after it. I mean, as an
Mm,
example of that, I always knew I wanted to get a college degree or I should, right? And so I signed up at our local community college to take classes because I need to get a college degree. That's the ambition, but then I never attended class. I never properly withdrew. And so there was a period where I had maybe 30 something credits under my belt and I had a 0.00 GPA because I either failed out, the teacher just gave me an F, or a W for withdrawal. So I always had this ambition
wow.
that sort of kept me there. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if I played sports all my life. And so I don't know if there was a competitive nature of not wanting to give up, but yet I wasn't also like going for the win. Like I didn't want to lose, but I didn't want to necessarily go for the win. Right.
Yeah. So
And,
was there a little self-sabotage there, do you think?
oh, I'm sure there was. I mean, I think there's still
Mm.
self sabotage at times now. Right. I think we all sort of do that. But yeah, I think definitely, and I think it's also just it never got so. It's weird because when I talk about homelessness, I came from New York City before I started my company, and I walk on the streets of New York City and I see real
Right.
homelessness, right? You imagine the ragged clothes and
Right.
you're holding up the cardboard signs and mental issues and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I grew up outside of Washington D.C. In Northern Virginia, and so for me, homelessness meant I was in suburban Virginia, in Northern Virginia, and um, there were some beautiful houses, and sometimes I would sneak into into a carport or something, and they had,
Uh,
outdoor furniture. I'd sleep. There was a lot of construction going on at that time, and they do the wood frames of the house, and they put the bathtub in. That's the first thing that really goes into a
no
house, and so
way. I didn't know that.
I would break into those houses because they either didn't have a lock or I knew how to get in, and I would sleep in the bathtub. So I always had like a roof over my head. There were some nights where it was cold, and occasionally a friend would let me stay at his house, not telling his parents or something. So it wasn't like, and I worked at a restaurant part time, which meant there may have been 2 days where I didn't eat.
Oh
But
my
that
God.
third day, I was able to go to the restaurant and cook. I was a cook, actually. I was started as a busboy, and then I moved
So
up to
many
prep cook,
skills.
and then I became a cook right there. And so I was able to feed myself occasionally. So it's like it's interesting. I people have told me I downplay this too much, and maybe I'm doing that again, but I don't want to give it the my light just went off in my office here, but
That's a sign.
that's a sign. Stop talking about it. But
No,
but so
that
it
that
wasn't like
point was
homeless.
accurate. Like
Yeah,
I don't think you downplay it. I wouldn't call it that word, but it seems to me as a former shrink, um, you have an incredibly refined, honed ability to see the positive. Would you say that's true?
I would say that, and I always knew that I wanted more. And I'm competitive, and I wanted more. And it really served me later in life because two things happened and have always happened. One is I was always running away from that guy 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? And not wanting to go backwards. That's a powerful motivator. And the second one, I was always
Mm.
chasing the person that I'm supposed to be 10 years from now because I went to college 10 years later than everybody else. I started my job 10 years later than everybody else. And so I look at where I'm supposed to be, and I'm always chasing 10. And I think it's great advice for anybody. You don't have to be like me where you're actually, you know, age wise 10 years back, but I think Matthew McConaughey talks about this, in one of his award winning speeches or whatever. He talked about chasing that guy 10 years from now. And I think it's a great strategy. And I've always chased where I'm supposed to be. I've always felt like I let time go by. Right.
So wow, because when you say chase, that doesn't seem constructive to me. So let me ask, like I always say, do what you need to stay afloat, but always plant the seeds for your future self. So
Yeah.
some of us really see that future self, even though it looks nothing like reality.
Right.
I would say, cherish that future self vision. That is you,
Yeah.
but you got to do some SHIT to get there. Is that kind of the
Right.
same thing you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly right. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted for that 10. I just knew that I was behind. Just
Right.
the fact that I was behind, and I didn't really compete or look at other people later in life. I did early on, and I always saw my classmates from high school what they were doing, and they were 10 years ahead of me, right? They had already graduated, they were already getting promoted to executive levels, and I was just starting. They already had families and everything else, and I was sort of competing, but then I was always really chasing myself and competing against myself, and I didn't know what it looked like. I just knew that what I was doing wasn't it yet, right?
There's so much to pull out of this, and I just want to highlight a few things. I think you had, no matter what happened, you had an abiding belief in yourself that
Yeah.
this is not it, but I'm going to keep going. And it doesn't sound like you for a moment felt like, what a loser. Why don't I just give up? Which is really an important lesson. The second thing I want to share is this bit about where we are on the timeline. So I had an
Mhm.
18-year corporate career. You probably saw that in one of the podcasts. And, successful on the outside gave me skills, but miserable on the inside and sick and all of that.
Mm.
So when I went to the master's degree program, I was 41. And
Mm,
before I stepped foot in that class, I, felt like throwing up. I felt like, God, you're so old. Can you even read? Can you
mhm,
even study? And you're going to be laughed at. I get there, and basically the whole graduating class was, corporate refugees.
mhm.
So much of that time pressure is really so fabricated in our own mind, don't you think?
And in our heart too, right? It's
Right.
it's it's the logical, this is where I should be or what I should be doing,
Should.
and you're
Mm.
not. And then there's the, this is what I want to be doing and I'm not. And I think both of those things are powerful.
And kind of
I
essential
always
to
say
get
that
aligned.
anytime, yeah, anytime you can be pushed by something and simultaneously pulled by something, it's pretty powerful.
Love that. All right, now I want to flash forward here. You had such amazing success here, and then you created your own enterprise. Do you, when you look back, can you state for us or share what do you think contributed to being so successful? I mean, you were
Mm.
made to be in charge of launching Disney Plus, for goodness sake, and all the finance and strategy work you did. What do you think was the key to your successes there?
I think there's a couple, and this is what my book is really based on, but I think one of them is I was me. Like I didn't
Me.
want to me. I was me. I mean, I was who I, it took me a while to come to the reality and the acceptance of, okay, I am the person that's 10 years, behind where I'm supposed to be, right? And this is who I am. And so I really was happy with me, whether I don't know how, but I was. And I think the other one was, and this is the key, I
Mm,
would say, and well, I would say there's two others. And this is probably the genesis of where Standout came from a long time ago, is I always wanted to be different because I was already different, not
yeah.
from a diversity perspective, but I was different. I was different in terms of, I was 10 year,
Yeah.
I was an intern at 30 when other people were 20, and I was starting
Wow.
my career at 31, other people were 21. And I was already different and it worked for me. And so I always wanted to be different. And part of standing out is, you can't stand out if you're the same as everybody else,
Ah,
right?
all right. Wait a minute. Questions. And I got choked up, teary eyed when you said I was me. And I have a gender lens here because this
Mm,
is what I do. I work with women. I can hear a few women saying, "Yeah, I can't be me." Good for him that he can be me, him.
mm,
But I do believe that what you're saying is relevant and applicable to everyone. But can you tell us, and you're not a woman, so you probably can't relate in the way I'm really saying, but that was my problem for 18 years. I couldn't be me.
mm,
I couldn't. It
mm,
wasn't allowed. It wasn't, if I were forceful, then I'm a biatch. If
right.
I were soft and gentle, I'm too soft and gentle to be vice president. It didn't work
Hmm.
for a second.
Hmm.
Um, Now you didn't have those issues, I'm guessing, but how did you embrace, look, I'm different. I'm going to go with it. How? How did you do that and not let the culture, the environment crush you down?
Part of it is, frankly, I don't know. I don't know what drove that. Later, I think I learned it, or I was at least comfortable in my skin, not because I did anything to do that. I just was, right?
Wow.
And I sort of had a, if people don't like me, they don't like me, right?
Wow.
And it's tough. I mean, it's interesting because, yeah, I don't know what
And
women
did that
go.
ever get in the way? I'm trying to think for a
Yeah.
woman to say, okay, look, this is who I am. You're going to have to. Now, there's a patriarchal world going on. We've got a lot of
Yep.
biases, so they don't work. But would you say that anybody ever said, I don't really like what you got going on there? I mean, did you push up against that ever or pretty
Oh yeah, no
okay.
question. There was stuff where where people didn't like the way I approached leadership or the way I approached my job, and there's a couple things I did. One is and you look, I'm not going to say I didn't take it personally, because I did, right? But I wasn't going to let it,
Question.
especially where I came from, dictate my
Yeah.
life and
You'd been
push me,
through
right?
so much.
So
It's like, what is this?
right.
This is nothing.
Right. So I either removed myself from the people, or I
Yeah.
removed myself from the situation and found places where I could be me and I was accepted as me, whatever that was.
What
And
a
I
beautiful
think,
lesson.
look, and I don't know what women go through, and it's hard. And I know that you nailed it exactly, how there's this sweet spot on how you have to behave. And I sort of saw it a little bit at Disney, where it's at least when I started back in 2000, it was there was a lot of male executives and male dominant, whatever. And I had some of my favorite leaders were women, and I saw what they ran up against. And one of my favorite leaders, Tracy, went through that same thing, and she was very not aggressive in a bad way, but she got her job done, and she cared about people and everything else. But she was like, "Hey, you need to soften your approach." And so I saw it. I can't, I will never feel it. My stepfather is African American too,
Wow.
so I've seen what he's had to deal with
Right.
as well. But I think it's one of the hardest things. It's why life is so hard. It's why our careers are so hard because,
Mm-hmm.
and my book starts with the acronym Standout starts with S, which is self. And if you can't start with yourself and be you, it doesn't matter what you do for the rest of anything you're trying to work on. So I mean, we all know it. The hardest thing is to put it into practice, right?
Oh, it's so good, so rich. All right, now let's move forward here to your standout X, your company, your book. What's the deepest goal for the book? Who are you really talking to, and what are you trying to heal or fix or address? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, what I do, the book really is just for me to get my ideas down on paper and put it out there and challenge myself to write a book. It's really intended for everything we're doing here is really intended for students and young professionals. I mean, maybe here's where your psychotherapy and you can come back and maybe this is me going back and
Mm,
mentoring my 20-year-old self,
right.
almost 30 years later, and that's what I'm doing. But I think students and young professionals are coming out of school or they're in school and they're like, what do I do with my life? Where do I go? They're chasing the wrong jobs in many cases. The values that they have are different than the values that society teaches. And there's just a lot. And then you look and you're like, personal development is multi-billion dollars. No one is talking to students and young professionals.
No.
Nobody. And and I led recruiting for a while when I was at Disney as part of my executive function. And I would go interview these amazing students, but they lacked the basic skills. Like they had the internship, they had the major, they had the desire, but they lacked basic life skills and things like that. So all that sort of combined to why I'm focusing on helping.
I love it. And to your point, I think what a lot of us are doing when we're trying to share thought leadership or helpful strategies to improve lives is that we're turning our own mess into a message. I wish I came up with that
Mm,
sentence. I didn't. But I think that's what because we feel so much empathy for that. And
mhm,
when I woke up and I was 40 and I thought, what am I going to do with my life here, my career?
mhm,
There was no help. The 20 things I tried were ridiculous. And I
mhm,
think that's what you're seeing. There's a gap and I got to
mhm.
fill it. And it also speaks to the younger me that was lost. Love
That's
it.
right.
So you've got the standout acronym. Would you
Mhm.
read those for me, what those represent for
Well,
us?
then I'm giving away the whole book, but I will share. I will tell you. So Standout really is sort of. Let me first tell you where it came from. It came from there anything that a student or young professional, or by the way, a parent, a teacher, a leader in an organization who is leading students, young professionals, everything you want to know is out there. Everything, right? Read a
Right.
book, go to a seminar,
There aren't
find
that
it,
many new ideas.
there's not a
Well,
lot of new
really.
ideas. We're talking different. Like there's new research coming out every
Right.
now and then, brain science and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's just like where do you start? And
Right.
so and
Mm.
I'm a huge proponent of personal development and learning, constant learning, and relentless pursuit of perfection. And but there was no way for me to like take everything and aggregate it in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
And I started writing my book. I got about halfway through the book, and this acronym, I kind of stumbled across it. I think I was bike riding one day, and I went back and rewrote the entire book around the acronym. So
It came to
it's
you while you were bike riding?
it came to me. I was thinking about the next chapters and what stories do I want to tell and that kind of thing. And so then that's where Standout X came from, and it really is literally a step by step process that, in reflection, I did to
Wow.
get out of where I was from. And so and we teach a lot about this, but the S starts with self. Like if you want to stand out, first of all, we tell you why you want to stand out. And I've heard a lot of people say, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to. It's like if you've ever wanted to be that one person selected for a job, you ever wanted to be that one person that person you're interested is, dates. If you ever wanted to get that there are times when you want to stand out, right? So once you convince people of
Love
that, then
that.
it's like, okay, how do you get there? Well, there's a process, and it starts with self. You have to know yourself really well. That's the S. And then you have to know where you're going tomorrow. T, right? So now you've got your point A and you've got your point B. Now we just fill in the gaps between the two.
Ooh.
Then it starts with attitude, right? Let's get you in the right frame of mind, right? Right? Your heart, your head, your soul. Then it goes to N, which is now, in the moment. And that's really about purpose, your purpose now, and what our purpose is.
Mm.
D is then what do you do day by day? So there's a journey that we all take, right? We make three choices every day, and by the way, 30,000 times a day you're making decisions every 2 seconds. Science says.
Oh,
So you're either
yikes.
doing something that betters yourself, makes yourself worse, or kind of keeps you in between. That's it. It's as simple as that. So how do you
Mm.
make decisions? And that's what D is about. O is then, how do you optimize everything you have? All of your foundational elements, the self, the tomorrow, the attitude. How do you optimize everything once you've learned it and you're working on it? Once you've done that, you've kind of worked on yourself. It's interesting because there's 9 letters in the acronym, and the first 6 are all about yourself,
Oh, that's what
right?
my course is all about. It's an
Exactly.
internal
It's
job here.
an
Let's
internal
face
job.
it.
Yep.
But
Everything
then you
that
have to
happens.
take action on those internal
Correct.
shifts. Without
That's
that, you're
exactly right.
lost.
Exactly right. So then it's, once you've done that, then U is uplift, which is leadership,
Mm,
right? You
love it.
uplift other people. And then where am I? STOUT. T is touch. So
Mm,
T is, once you've worked on yourself, once you've assumed a leadership role, then it's what impact are you going to have? And it's how you touch other people. Like my
mm,
goal today is to touch you and to touch your audience and to say something that they walk out, you're there, you got this emotional feeling, this logical, whatever else it is. It's one of my 3 core values. And so impact, touch,
mm.
and then X is the X factors. I've studied a bunch of people that you would call standouts, and there's 10 factors that they have that helps them, that's the reason why they're standing out. So
Ooh, give me one so we don't give away the book. Give me one, your favorite, the one that you think
exceptional.
you have.
I would say exceptional. You
Yeah.
excellence. You do something with just, people stand out because they're themselves. They're different than everybody else. They move our emotions, and they do something in a really excellent way. And we're drawn to people that just have excellence in them, aren't we? I mean, we're
Yes.
just like people that are excellent in their craft, right? And so
Wow.
if you are, if you're different and you're yourself, and if you are, you're moving people's emotions, and you are being excellent at what you do, then you're going to be memorable and you're going to stand out.
I love this. I do, again, not to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but when I lay gender over this, so I've worked with thousands of women around the world. There's something called perfectionistic over functioning that I've found
Mm,
and women are doing it. They
mm,
are doing more than is appropriate, healthy and necessary, and they're trying to get an A+ in all of it.
mm,
So women have excellence down pat. They have maybe even no, they don't recognize their difference. They don't think they're great. They don't want to say they're great because we've been programmed not to do that. The touching people, I think they've got it in that they're often, not all women, not all men, but they're connective, they're emotional, they're empathic.
mhm.
But I do think they struggle with, if all you're trying to do is be excellent, you're going to lose yourself.
Yeah, and excellence, people think about excellence as perfect, and it's not,
Yes.
right? Because nobody's perfect.
No.
Excellence, really, if you really think about it, excellence is doing something exceptional beyond the norm and beyond what someone expects. So if I expect to
Ooh.
go see a great Broadway play, and I've heard something about an actor, and that actor I've got a
Mm.
certain expectation going in about what that actor is going to do. And if they do something and they draw me in and they're just excellent at what they do, they may miss a line. They might, not be in the right place, the right cue or whatever else. But I guarantee you, I'm going to walk out because my expectation was one thing. And what they delivered was so much further above and beyond that is excellence. It's not perfect.
I
That
love
is
it.
excellence.
And can I build on that
Yeah.
so that people really get this? I think when you're talking about an actor, for instance, and I think it's the same, you were moved. It wasn't that you were looking at an excellent performance. You lost touched that it was a performance.
Yep.
You were so engrossed. So what I want to say to women listening, why don't you try to reshape the definition of excellence so it isn't that you're killing yourself working 24/7. It's that you are
Mhm.
scaling back and doing what's healthy and appropriate, but you are doing it the way you do it that moves people in the doing of it. Does that sound right?
It sounds exactly right. I'll give you another secret power for women that I believe,
Oh,
right? Not being a woman. When you go into any meeting, any interview, any interaction, as humans, we're trying to do three things. Men are good at two of them. Women have the ability to do the third. I believe better than us.
oh, oh,
You want them, and it's three questions.
taking
What
notes.
do what do I want them to what do I want them to think?
Okay.
What do I want them to do? And how do I want them to feel? I think women have a they're there's just something about women that just like men, more men. I don't want to
Yes.
like
We're not
categorize
painting
everybody. I'm
everybody
not
with,
painting
no, we're not.
everybody like that. I'm just saying that it's a superpower that probably more often women have, they don't use. And certainly men as well, right? Men are more logical, they're fact based, and there's some women that are too. And so whether you're a man or a woman, maybe, but I think there's a superpower in women to be able to tap into that more emotional connection to people. And if you can walk out, like when I interview people, I go through the, okay, this person can do the job. Okay, this person demonstrated that they're capable. Great. But then I ultimately sit around, I had three great candidates and I end up making a gut feel, right? And it's something with like a lot of like, and Maya Angelou, right, talks
That's
about,
it.
right, it's exactly right. It's like it's how you make them feel. And I think it's just a superpower that people can tie into it. So I think excellence above the norm, like understanding what other people's expectations are and delivering it, the greater that is, the greater the excellence. And then tapping into people's emotions is just a powerful way. And by the way, inherently you can only do that if you're yourself. Like it's hard enough to be an actor and try to play someone else. The only way that you can really tap into a person's emotion is to be you. You naturally have to do that.
That's
And
beautiful.
then being excellent, it's harder enough to try to do it as somebody else, and you do it as you. So
I love it. How are we doing with time? More. I want more. One thing I just want to tell people, a lot of people say, I'm going on an interview, I'm doing this. I don't know how to make that. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make that connection. So I'm going to give you a tip. It's curiosity. Like the
mm,
reason I love this podcast is I'm not even looking at the questions you submitted and I submitted. I'm literally just listening so intently. And I'm also not listening to what am I going to ask next? Sometimes
so
I don't
true.
know till after you said it.
So true.
Just curiosity.
So true.
Wow, what makes you tick?
Mhm.
And wow, is that interesting to me? And I promise you, people will respond well. Don't you think? Would you agree with that?
No question about it. And the people that are the greatest problem solvers ask the greatest questions.
That's so true. And they're disruptive questions usually. All right. Now,
Right.
we can't talk about your entire book right now, but you know what I'd love to know? If you asked me what is the biggest challenge of mid career professionals, I can tell you, particularly women, but I can tell you with men. Can you tell us of all the things you mentioned that teens and young people and right out of college, they don't quite know what they want or they were pressured by their parents? This is what I see of 40 and 50-year
Oh
olds.
yeah.
I studied the wrong thing because I was told to, and they're not nice about it. They're
Mhm.
mad, or they haven't been walked through this process, or they weren't taught life skills because there's hover mothers and fathers that
Mhm.
that say, "Let me protect my child from anything."
Correct.
Of all that plus the millions of things you see, if you've got exactly the audience that you teach and work with listening to this, what's the one thing that they don't realize they don't have going for them in terms of what they've done or what they need to understand that you think is the biggest thing that holds them back? What is the one thing?
I would say the one thing, I'm going to build on something you said in that question. I think the one thing that holds people back, whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 40s, and this is something that I've said over and over again, we are more concerned about protecting what could go wrong that we don't go after what could go right. And I think, like you said, it parents are hovering over their kids and all because they don't want to see that downside. They want to be, there's that safety net, and too often we're worried about losing the safety net that we don't go after what's possible. I mean, I was in New York City as the senior vice president at Madison Square Garden.
Good
The homeless
grief.
kid had finally made it.
Wow.
Like I'm making more money than I ever thought was possible.
Wow.
And I walked away. I walked away. I walked away to start my company. Um, and by the way, I'm not in my 20s or 30s or even 40s right now, right? So I walked away, and it's because I'm going after what's possible, and I was okay losing what was effectively a guarantee, right? And I think people just don't go after what's possible for them. They either don't know it, so they don't know what to go after, which is what we try to help, or they don't have the activation energy to go after it. I'd say that's the biggest thing.
I would have to agree with you completely. And, I've written a lot about this, about, the top excuses we make not
Mm,
to move. And I say it like that. I mean, they're excuses. We don't know they're excuses. We
mhm.
think, look, I have this big house. My three kids need the money I bring in. We need my 401k and my benefits and my health insurance. I get it. But in the end, and if you spend enough time with people, my dad died at 93, mom is 96. She's just recovered from COVID, but is much
Mm,
weaker. When you spend enough time with people who've had full lives and they're at the end of them, they're not talking about, I stayed at MSG.
no,
They're talking about what they didn't do.
no, exactly right. I mean, I don't know if you have the time, but I could share a quick story about
I
why I
love it.
left MSG, which is
Ooh,
which is something that's really resonated with people. My family, I've got a beautiful wife, 3 kids, but they were in Orlando when I got moved up to New York to go work and do this Disney Plus thing, and then I got recruited to Madison Square Garden. So I was flying up to New York on a Monday and flying back on a Friday, and I was doing
wow.
that. I did it for 2 years. Both my wife and I are divorced, and so our kids go with their moms and dad respectively. So one spring break, my daughter came up to see me. Of all the stories I tell, being homeless, this is the one that's most powerful for me. And you can tell
Yeah.
yeah. So she came up to see me, and we went to the airport. I'm so proud because she's like flying. She was 11 at the time, flying by herself back to go to her mom's, and we went to JFK, and I went to put her on the plane. She gets the special little medallion thing, and they take care of her or whatever else. And it started to snow, and so she goes down the ramp. I'm so proud. I'm watching her. Can't wait to talk to her afterwards. How did it go? She gets on the plane. It goes and gets de-ice, goes to the end of the runway, goes to take off. Plane takes off 50 feet into the air. It's snowing so hard you can't see the plane anymore. The
Ah,
plane just lifted off in the air.
good grief.
I turn around. I'm like, I got to go to work. So I turn around. I got about 5 feet, and I'm in the middle of this concourse area where all the gates are, and I almost couldn't move. And I sat down right there, and I started crying
Mm.
harder than I've ever cried before. And I was thinking about, I'm the senior vice president at Madison Square Garden. I went from homeless to where I'm at, everything else. And I said, nothing matters. And I asked myself, I said, what am I doing?
Does
What am
this
I
mean you were so worried about your daughter getting there safely? That's
doing?
what
No,
that that
it was deeper than that. It was I am making the trade-off for the money and the title and the 401k and everything else that I
not
wasn't
to
with
be
my
with my
family,
child, not to be
with my family. And it was at that moment where I decided to start writing the book, and I started working on my business idea and everything else. And
wow.
and so that's what really got it for me. And you're right. We do all these things not realizing what's important. And I didn't want to wait until later. And so that's how I got to where I'm at now. And now
What
I'm
a
in
story.
Orlando
So
with my family.
beautiful.
It's great. It's great.
So I'm going to highlight one thing that I hear. Maybe it's going to be too woo woo or spiritual, but I think you're divinely guided. I think we're all divinely guided. Or you can call it intuition, or you can call it my higher self, whatever you want to call it. But you had a breakdown moment
Hmm.
right there. And I always say, what is breakdown? It slaps you across the face and pushes you to your knees.
Hmm.
And thank goodness for those,
Hmm.
because it's those that rip us from that comfort, that horrible comfort that we have that isn't letting us live a real life that we want. And you
Yeah,
had it, but then you acted on it.
that's right.
What I see, like I had breakdown moment after breakdown moment, but I didn't act until
Mm,
the universe booted me out of my job after 9/11. I mean, it really was a gift. So I think people, what do you think, John? I'm praying that you get out of what John's saying that when you have a breakdown moment, when you sit down in the concourse of JFK and cry, that's your breakdown moment. And that's where the breakthrough can come if you act. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree, but I would go one step further and
Right.
say, do it before you even have the breakdown moment. Like, don't
That's the
don't w
better way.
like, don't wait for like, if you know that
Oh,
you're not in the right place and you know that you're meant for something different and better, or there's something else you wanna do, I'm here to tell you and there's nothing special about me. I don't think I'm
ha.
divinely anything.
I
I
don't
I don't
think
think there's
so,
anything special.
dear.
I think I'm normal. Like, I just I feel normal. And I follow all the other people out there and I look and like, gosh, they have this or this charisma or whatever else. I'm no different. And my point is if I can do it, anybody can do it, but only if you actually do it.
Do
Right. And so I
it.
would say do it before you have that breakdown moment.
I love it. I love it. And just to confirm, the reason I think it's easier to do it after the breakdown is there's no turning back when you have that. You're like, you know what?
That's right.
None of this is worth what I'm feeling in this moment. And so that makes it easier. But no, don't wait. Start listening. Start. And you said one other thing I'm going to leave people with. And I talk about this constantly. Everything starts with self. That's where your book starts.
Right.
You have to have the most intimate relationship with yourself. None of us do that.
Right.
We know everybody else, our spouse, our mother, our father, our kids, much more than we know ourselves. So, one huge takeaway, I hope, is it's now time to start knowing yourself. And I have a career path assessment. I'm sure in your book you have tools
Mhm.
and resources, John, about, well, how
Mhm.
the heck do I know myself? Because there's so many layers of who I should be that
That's
I
right.
don't really even know who I am. Such a powerful talk. I'm so inspired. So,
Mhm.
where do people learn? Where do they get your book? Where do they learn about all your programs? Where do we send them, John?
Easiest place to go is to our website. It's standoutmovement.com. Don't do the standout movement. It's standoutmovement.com. And
Okay.
there from there you can link to all the social media. You can buy the book on Amazon there. You can see what we're doing. And we're just getting started. We've got 18 programs that are on the roadmap right now. We're on number 4, and I think we're making a pretty big impact. And I'm just super excited about what's
Wait,
coming.
can't wait to read all about them. Do you have any? You're so inspiring. Any last words for the people listening who feel like, gosh, I wish I were in John's shoes where I knew who I was and I could be me and I could make a difference with who I am? Any last words of
I guess the
inspiration?
only 3 things I would say about being you. One is it's okay, right? It's okay to be you. Um, and people that don't like you, then you get rid of them. Really. I mean, the second is that it really takes self reflection and discovery, and you keep asking questions and questions and questions, and you have to be really honest with yourself. So if you ask all the questions, and by the way, have other people help you with that. It's really important. And I think the third is about being yourself is give yourself the flexibility and the freedom to change. I mean, we might identify and discover ourselves now, but the person that you are now is going to be different than the person you're going to be 10 years from now.
Okay.
But if we get fixed in a point of time that this is who I am now, and we actually change and we're holding in our brain to that person that was before, then you create this gap and you lose focus of who you are. So
Beautiful.
that's what I would say. Give yourself the flexibility to change as you change.
That is so fantastically beautiful. I can tell you've read thousands of books and you've
Hmm.
created your version of.
Yes.
So grateful. It's so
Mhm.
inspiring. I'm thrilled that we've done this, and I hope you'll come back again, John. I hope you'll.
Anytime you need me,
So
whatever you
fun,
need, I'm here.
so
Yes.
inspiring. All right, people. I say this after every episode, but honestly, if this didn't move you forward, I don't know. I don't know what will, but I bet you'll have questions. And, I feel like I'm not doing my job if you don't have questions. And I'm sure John feels the same. I mean, how you hear this is different from every other person who hears it. So it's in the questions that help us dimensionalize it. So wherever you see this, and if you want to reach out to John on his contact page or me, or wherever you see it on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, write us a question, please. And we'll both, or, direct
Mhm.
it to John, we'll both do our best to fill in that gap of, I love what you said, but I don't know quite how to do it, because that's
Mhm.
often what happens. Will you? We'd
Mhm.
love to hear from you. And thanks again, John. Come back soon. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you
Right.
next time.
Thank you.